Hello and welcome to this training session in which I will show you Eclipse, and this is with a context of occupational therapy. To begin, you'll need to make sure that you're in either Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome if you have access to a copy of the system, training system. If you try to use this in Internet Explorer, this will not work with all the functions needed. First, we'll need to log in. Remembering that the password is case sensitive. This is the Eclipse home screen. As you can see, there's a table of contents on the left hand side. There aren't many options at the moment because we're not actually in a person's record. These will populate further when we do have a person to view. You can always return to the home screen by selecting this top option. The eRecords link will take you to eRecords, where you can access historic records for citizens who have been on Care First and had documents uploaded to eRecords. You can also access the shared care record, which is where other constituency or other areas such as Solihull are able to share their data with us, and vice versa, we can share our data with them. And this can just be regarding citizens who may cross from one area to another. The main screen, as you can see, shows the login that I'm currently in, Train 53, and the ID of this login. In the live system, this will be your name. This page contains a summary showing the teams that you will have access to. In this case, I've got the Training Team 5, Adult Brokers and Occupational Therapy team. For yourselves, you may have a different combination of teams, or you may just have the one team, depending on the work that you regularly undertake. You can also view the tasks that are assigned to you. You can see in this case there are none. You can view any assigned to the team. So as we're in the occupational therapy team, we can see there's an occupational therapy referral. It's indicated that this is late, as it was due on the 19th of December, and as of recording, it is the 21st of December. The final reminder refers to any cases that are not overdue, but are due to be worked on shortly. And work on time is any work that is impending, but not overdue and not on final reminder. You can also view colleagues' tasks. This is colleagues within the team. And you can see that there are a few of these here. If I direct your attention to the very top of the screen, you can see the options that will be always available to us. So quite self-explanatory, you have the log out button. Moving to the left, you have the Learn How button. Clicking on this will bring up a further menu where you can search for any help that you need. You can look at any improvements and updates that have been recently released. There's a user guide section. So you can see as we've collapsed this section, we have a Getting Started guide, Search guide, Notifications guide, Add Record guide, Relational Security guide, and Logging guide. There are frequently asked questions. So you can see here, for instance, we've got how do I reassign work or a work list task? How do I reassign work to individual or team owners? How do I change my password? And there are many more. You can also take a guided tour of the system. These are on topics such as getting started, search overview, and home screen overview. And there's a feedback button here. Carrying on to the left, you have your profile options. So you can see here that this says Train 53, as that's what I'm in. When it comes to actually having the live system, of course, the login you'll have will refer to your name. If you drop this menu down, you can see it tells you which profile you're in. So currently I'm in the occupational therapy team, and I'm in a profile which has manager practitioner access. From this menu, you can change your password or the secondary password, and you can also change notification settings. If I click on this, you'll see that this allows you to update what notifications you want to receive and how you want to receive them. Now, the SMS text message at this current time is disabled and will not be used as yet. You can receive email notifications or just get them in the Eclipse browser when you're logged in. You can decide whether you want events to be notified about to be just your cases or cases that your colleagues may be involved with. And you can say specific events that you want to receive notifications for, such as case allocation, work list assignments, task reminders, etc. This can be changed at any time. You can see that I can tick the box and untick the box. I can select as many as I want and then also unselect these. This would be very useful depending on how you're finding the notifications. So you may find that you would like to receive more notifications, or you might choose to receive fewer. This will be up to you to set up. Carrying on to the left at the top of this screen, you've got the team selection and profile selection. So you can see as I drop this down, I can choose to change to the Adult Brokers ASC Worker profile, the Training Team 5 ASC Manager profile, or the Training Team 5 ASC Manager Practitioner profile. The difference between these two bottom profiles is the level of access, so view only or the actual all access. This next button on the left of that previous section is the Recently Accessed Records button. As you can see, it looks like a clock. And if you choose to open this, you can see that we can see the recently accessed records for this profile, for this user. And for instance, these are profiles, or these are citizens that I've looked at today. If they were any from yesterday, these would then be listed further down with the indication of which day they were actually accessed. You can use this to instantly look into a person. The final section at this top bar is the search. This goes from here where you have the drop down which says person to here where you have the word advanced. In Eclipse, everyone will be issued with a new ID. So it won't be the 8-digit Care First ID anymore, although you can search on this and I will demonstrate this as well. The default search is for a person. You can see that there's also an organisation search. So this would be your teams or your GP centres, contact centres, care centres, etc. The group option tends to refer to family groups, which is usually for the children's department. New references, as you can see, for a person, start with PER. For an organisation or a team, this will start ORG. And you can see a few have arrived there. When searching for a person, you'll need to type in at least 4 digits, but of course you don't need to know a person's ID in this new system. You can simply search for their name. So if I search for John, you can see some options have come up, and you can see John as a first name, John as a surname, and there will be more options. But for now, we are limited by the amount we can view. So if we click on Show All, we can see here there are more options. The search function, like a lot of pages, will default to 10 rows per page. By clicking on this drop down at the bottom here, you can view up to 100 results at a time. And now if I continue to scroll down, you can see we have more results. You can see here as well that although we search for John, we also have results here for Jenny, Joan, Joanna, John, spelt slightly differently, Jean. This is what is known as a fuzzy search or a fuzzy logic search, and it will look for things which are spelt or sound similar to what you have searched for. In order to go back to a clear search, you can click Clear All Criteria. This will take you back into the advanced search. If I cancel out of this, I can also demonstrate that if you click on Advanced, you can get into the advanced search by this way too. The other advantage of the fuzzy logic search is if you make a mistake, which you can see has come up with a red squiggly line as this has spell checked for us, you can still receive results for the correct name. Now in the bottom left, you can clear all the criteria as I did before. However, in the top right, you can actually show the criteria that you've already searched for. This means that if you want to do a further search, but you don't want to lose the details that you've already searched for, maybe you want to expand by looking for all Johns who are female, as you can see the gender, then this has happened and we can continue to expand on this search. Alternatively, we can clear all criteria to go to a blank search. There are more options now. So as well as searching for date of birth, you can search for an age range. You can search for an NHS number, which will need to be in the 334 format. And you can search for reference numbers, which, as you can see from my drop-down options, is where you would search for Care First IDs. You can also search, for instance, for national insurance numbers. There are other reference numbers that you can search for, and I will show this when I have added a person and I'm updating their details. On the topic of adding a person, there are two ways that you can do this, as in two places where you can add a person from. The first one is in the allocations section. So from your home screen, in the top right corner, you have a big friendly blue button which says allocation. Clicking on this will take you to a page which shows you what is allocated to you. As you can see on this profile, there is nothing. You can look at your team's allocation and your colleagues' allocations, as well as your recently accessed clients, which, as you remember, can be accessed anytime from the top of the screen. Underneath where we found the allocation button, you have the Add Person button. If you try to move on without completing all of the mandatory information, you notice that an error will appear at the top of the screen. This will show you not just that there has been an error, but it also tells you exactly what the error is, and you can tell what you've missed out. You can close the error with the little X at the top right of this yellow box. The first bit of mandatory information that we need is the type of person that we are adding. This defaults to client. Other options include adopter and foster carer, which are for the children's departments generally. You have the professional option, which is where you will add GPs, health visitors, and other professionals. And there is also a section for carer, family member, household member, or other. Selecting this option will require fewer mandatory pieces of information. This is for data protection reasons, as carers, family members, household members, and others may not be citizens or clients that we will need to or be able to justify gathering the further information from. When you come to adding your person, you'll notice that title is not a mandatory piece of information. Mandatory pieces of information are indicated by the asterisk or star after the title there. While it's not mandatory to complete the title, you'll notice if I select, for instance, Doctor, there has been no change to the gender options, male, female, indeterminate or unknown. However, if I select Miss, the gender option for female will be automatically selected. If I select Mr, this will be changed to male, and again, selecting Mrs will change this to female. As a doctor is a gender neutral term, and also if you select MX, which is a quite common title for non-binary and other gender identities, this will not change the selection that you've already got or add a selection if you don't have any. This is because it will not assume. In this case, I am going to select the MX title and choose a gender of indeterminates. Select a forename. I'm just going to select a random name. As this is a training system, it's not important. Born is where you would record the date of birth. In this section, as you'll notice, the year, month and day are in separate boxes for selection. If you don't know the person's date of birth, but you do know their age, you can simply type in their age and a year of birth will be suggested to you. If you do decide, however, that you would like to fill this in, you see that below the birth selection boxes is the option to mark the date of birth as estimated. The final piece of mandatory information is the ethnicity. This may not be known at the stage of adding the person. However, there are options for whether this is not known or refused, and then there are other options. These details can be changed at a later stage, so although we would like to get it correct and accurate as soon as possible, they are possible to change at a later date if you don't know the time of adding a person. You can at this point add an NHS number, but this is not mandatory. The CHI number refers to, I believe, a Community Health Index or indicator, which is a Scottish Health equivalent of an NHS number. This is not required, and for the purposes of training, if you do wish to put in random information, you'll notice that this is not this is something that will be validated, and it's better to leave out entirely. In practice, in the live system, it's likely that this would be very rarely added, if at all. Once you've completed the mandatory information, click on Next, and this will take you to a further screen which offers to add a professional relationship for you. This will default to yourself, with the assumption that you may be adding a person that you can work on personally yourself. You can change this and add someone else in. So for instance, Jenny Smith. And again, we could just search for the name rather than having to know Jenny's ID. You can select the relationship, which, as you'll see, it doesn't just refer to social workers or social care practitioners, which are options in this list, but it could be that you wanted to add someone straight away or add a relationship to someone such as a GP. One thing to note here is that you can't add someone as a free-form relationship here. If I, for instance, wanted to add Mickey Mouse, you'll notice the option has not appeared, and therefore we would not be able to add this relationship. At this stage, it's also possible to skip the creation of a professional relationship, as it might not be appropriate at this time. And this is what we'll do in this occasion. Click on Save, and your person will be created. I will now explain the person details. If you start with the first section, the identification, as you can see, this shows the person's name, date of birth, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other standard identification details. In the bottom right, there is an edit button. If you click on this, you get the option to change the details that we already have, as well as add further details that we've not been able to add yet. For other forenames, you will be looking at, for instance, middle names. For the display name, you will be looking at possibly an alias or something else that a person would like to be known as. For the other names, there are any other aliases can be added, or perhaps a maiden name. The Eclipse system is quite good for providing additional information and guidance. When you see icons such as these blue circles with question marks, if you hover your mouse over them, you can see help with this field has arrived. And this explains that you can use this field to record a different name to forename/surname for display throughout the Eclipse system. Once again, you can change the date of birth here, or the person's gender. Something new in Eclipse is the gender identity option. From this, you can choose the binary options of man or woman, or you can select self-defined if applicable. If you do select this option, you will need to put in the self-defined gender identity. In this instance, I'm going to enter non-binary. You can also update things such as sexual orientation with a drop-down list. Ethnicity, as stated before, you can change this here. You can add the NHS number, you can add the person's religion, and the country of birth. Once again, quite an extensive list of possibilities. The final thing you can add in this section is the citizenship, and as you can see, there is no room in this section to add any details. What you would need to do if you ever need to add someone's citizenship is click on this blue square with the cross symbol, and you can see that fields have been added. From this, you would just be able to select the appropriate nationality. You can select a start date, and in this box it's actually possible to double click, such as we could do in Care First, to put in today's date, or you can do plus or minus days. So we could say that citizenship of in the United Kingdom started 100 days ago, and that would be automatically worked out for you. You can add further fields which may be used for dual citizenship. It's also possible to add many more fields. As you can see, we've added in an extra 3 there. If you accidentally add too many fields, or you decide that you don't need to record some information after all, you can click on the red square with the cross, and that removes the citizenship field. You can also remove data that's already there with this button. The next section we come across is the address section. As you can see, addresses will be laid out in a table as we add them. By clicking on the blue Add button there, I've brought up this window to add the address. The first option you have is if a person's location is not known. You'll need to select a reason from the drop-down list, and the options address not known, homeless, no fixed abode, normally resident overseas, or out of area. You should only select from this box if the person's location is actually unknown, and I'll show you why this is. You can see here that there's a postcode box to search for the address on. If I'm to select an option here, and I select, for instance, homeless, you can see that postcode search has disappeared. There doesn't appear to be a way to remove this selection from this box, and Eclipse in some instances likes to be quite logical, and the logic here is that if you're homeless, you shouldn't also be able to have a home address. If you have selected this box, you will need to click on Cancel, and then once again click on Add. When adding a location, you can see here there's a handy information box telling you to enter either a full valid postcode or a partial postcode with a house name and number. So for instance, the B5 postcode area for house number 56, and you can see that results have been received not just for street number 56 but also for flat 56 and even a car space 56. If you select one of these, you'll notice that we are now not able to edit this field. You can, however, click on Change, and this will return you back to the blank search. Now, as an alternative, we can type in a postcode that we know, for instance in this case B11BB for the council house, and you can select that in the exact same way and change it in the exact same way. The next field is the type, and this is emergency home placement and work. This is similar to Care First. The usage drop-down box would usually be used for either permanent or temporary. However, there is also an other Care First option, and this relates to anyone who's migrated from the Care First system to Eclipse and we don't know whether they are permanent or temporary in their residence. In this occasion, I'm going to select temporary, and for the type, I'm going to select placement. Room and floor are not mandatory pieces of information, and in most situations will not be required. Finally, you must select the start date. Once again, such as the date of birth we found, you cannot double click to get today's date. You will need to fill in the year, month and day. Alternatively, you can see underneath in blue text an option to select the current date. You can also click on this calendar symbol to receive a calendar that you can then journey through. The final option here is the Do Not Disclose button, which you may require if a person is in a refuge or is otherwise in an address that they do not want to be disclosed. It's a simple tick box, so if we tick that and click on Save, you can now see the address has been added to this table, and as we clicked on Do Not Disclose, we've got a little no entry sign saying Do Not Disclose if you hover over it, so this can be seen at a glance. If I direct your attention back to the top of the screen, underneath where we have our standard Eclipse options for the website, you'll see we've got the person's details. If I scroll down or scroll up, this bar will remain in place. From this place, you can also get quite useful common information, such as you can see the person's address has been updated here. It has cut off, so we can click on the little arrow at the side just to expand that selection. What we can also tell here is any indicators such as Do Not Disclose. Here we can see it's a placement address, and here we can see it's a temporary address. Again, this is useful at a glance for someone to find out information that may be useful. Carrying on to the next section, we have the contact details. From here, you can see we can add phone number, mobile number, email address, website, social media, and fax number. If we click on the big blue Add button, we will now have the options for what we want to add. You can see now that you can select what the contact type is quite easily, so you can select whether it's a telephone or email. This avoids the possibilities that arose in Eclipse of accidentally selecting an email address type, but when you've clearly put in a telephone number. If we do select telephone, if I put in a number that isn't actually a number at all and try to save this, you'll see an error has occurred at the top of the screen. This is because you may only use numbers and spaces in this field. This was a message given out in Care First, as it was found that the data would not migrate properly to Eclipse. However, the Eclipse system prevents you entirely from doing this. Going back up to the telephone type here, you can see that this breaks down to fax, landline, mobile, pager, or text phone. In this case, I'm going to select mobile. The type option is emergency, home, or work. And the usage, once again, is permanent or temporary. The final option here is a little tick box for verified. If we tick this, you can see that a date box has appeared. The usage of this box will be, say for instance, the person was added a year ago with a temporary number, and today a social worker or occupational therapist has conducted a home visit and just checked with the citizen as to whether this number is still correct, which they've confirmed it is. So, although this was originally added 365 days ago, we can now double click and change that to today's date. And now the next person who looks at the file will know as of when the number was still correct and know whether to expect it to be correct or not when they contact the customer. Once again, if you look at the top of the screen in the citizen's details, you can see the contact number has been added to this top line. And again, we can see the temporary indicator that we put on this. One of the main reasons that text was ever put into Care First ID, Care First contact details, is to bring awareness to any certain special circumstances. So, for instance, an elderly citizen may have the son or daughter's telephone number or another contact to speak to on their behalf, or a deaf person may require text messages only to be sent to their phone and no actual phone calls to be made. Rather than having to go through a few hoops to find this sort of information in Eclipse, if we scroll back up to the top of the page, you'll see in the top right we have the options for alerts. If you click on this, you can view any alerts that already exist, or you can add new ones. If I add an alert, you can see the options here include communication preferences and contact preferences. If we were to click on this, then we can put a note in. So you could say, for instance, to contact the daughter of this person whose name is Jenny. Unlike on Care First, you would not be expected to put Jenny's number onto the client's contact details. You would expect this to go onto Jenny's details, and as Jenny would need to have her own profile within the system, then a note like this would indicate that we need to look up Jenny's profile. As you can see, where I've saved this alert, there is now a big bright amber sign showing an alert. If we hover over this, we can view what the alert is. This should save a lot of time for someone and also potential inconvenience for the citizen if we do not follow like requests that they've made. On the other side from alerts, you'll notice there is an add button. I mentioned earlier that there are two places in which you can add a person. If we click on here, we can see this is a second place. For managers, there's also the warnings button next to alerts. If I scroll back down to where I got to, the next section is the reference numbers. Now, as you'll recall, as I say, we can search for Care First IDs, national insurance numbers and more. If we click on add, you'll see from this drop-down list all the types of numbers that we can record, and here is Care First Person ID, which should have migrated over from Care First in all occasions, and therefore will be unlikely to be something you'll need to add. You can also add the national insurance number, passport number and other identification numbers here. And now this will be searchable through the advanced option. The next section relates to languages. If we click on the add button in the bottom right corner, when adding a language, you'll see that now, rather than selecting from a drop-down list, we can start to type something, and after just 3 letters, I can add that this person's first language is French. Add other languages in the exact same way. And just as easily, you can remove languages that you don't require. Regardless of what language has been recorded as the citizen's first language, you need to indicate their proficiency in English. This can range from none to basic to proficient, e.g. fluent. You can select whether an interpreter is required and also indicate any non-verbal communication, such as Braille, British Sign Language, or Makaton. If you want, you can select more than one option by clicking on or holding down the Control key and then clicking whichever other options you need. The next section relates to education. You can see that there is no add or edit button here. This section would usually be completed by the children's department and may only show for an adult if they have gone from being a child in care to an adult in care. Final section here is the physical items. I will explain what this is. I wouldn't expect this to be used too often. However, if I click on the add button, you can see from the type of item selection, this relates mainly to paper files. From here, you can also state what paper files are held, what the location of these might be. You can see, for instance, the children's hospitals there, other hospitals listed. You've got Lancaster Circus, Milford House, and other offices. You can write a description of what the paper file is and what is held. We could, for instance, say that we hold a copy of the citizen's birth certificate. You can say what date that was received. Again, you can double click to select today's date. Any reference number if you have it, and any further notes that are required, which could include, for instance, a date that the file is due to be destroyed if appropriate. Now that I've shown you adding a person, I will show you adding a relationship. You can see there are currently no relationships. However, you can change this by clicking on the add in the top right corner. And you can see the types of relationship we can add are familial, social, professional, organisational, and team. To begin, we're going to add a familial relationship. As I mentioned before, you cannot add someone as a relation if they are not already in Care First. So for this reason, you would need to create them as a person. As you can see, the rest of the boxes are greyed out because I haven't selected a valid person. When you have selected a person, you can change them as well from the button on the side. When choosing the person's relationship type, you'll see in this list, other than the neutral relations such as cousin and partner, all the others are for the male relations such as brother, father, grandfather, nephew, son, uncle. This is because Jack White is listed on his profile as male, and therefore the options are as appropriate. If we select that Jack is Cindy's brother, then you can see we have options now to further define that relationship. So for instance, is it an adoptive brother, a half-brother, a step-brother, a brother-in-law, or multiple birth, which relates to twins, triplets, etc. You can see in this case, the start date of the relationship has become the 18th of January 1975 as default. This is on the understanding that Cindy and Jack would have become brother and sister when the younger person, in this case Cindy, was born. If we change this option to partner, you can see for a start that no address has been put in automatically, and the options we have here have changed. So now we can define this relationship as civil partner, married, engaged, committed, divorced, separated, and so on. Once again, with these fields, you can do minus to define by dates. The final selection here is what the features of the relationship are. Unlike in Care First, where you would need to add Jack to Cindy's profile in the network screen, and then select next of kin, and then add Jack again, and select carer, and so forth until you filled Cindy's network screen up with many instances of Jack White just in different roles. In Eclipse, you'll simply add Jack once, and then all of the features of the relationship will be listed. At the same time as adding Jack to Cindy's profile, we can, like Cindy will be added to Jack's profile, and rather than have to then go into Jack's profile and amend the relationship to signify if, for instance, Cindy is Jack's next of kin, then you can simply select that at this point. Click on Save to add the relationship. You can see now Jack's details have been entered in so that we can see who Jack is at a glance. Once again, you can hover over these little icons to see what features there are. So for instance, next of kin and carer. You can also see a warning has been brought up for Jack, in this case that he has a dangerous pet. And at the top of the screen, next to where we have the alert, we now have a warning for Cindy, and the warning is that one or more of her relations has a warning. So from seeing this, if you have just opened up Cindy's file, you can then check out her relationship screen and look for any warnings. At the end of this table, you have a column entitled Actions. You'll see this throughout Eclipse, and this will show you basically what you are able to do with the data. If we click on Select, we see we can add a relationship, edit the relationship, or end the relationship. If we want to edit the relationship, then we could, for instance, say that Jack is no longer Cindy's carer, but Jack is an emergency contact. You can click on Save, and you can see immediately these features have changed now. And now that you've no longer got the carer icon, but you have got the emergency contact icon. If you want to end the relationship, you'll still need to put in the end date, such as in Care First, and a reason. However, now there are much fewer reasons, so it's a lot easier to work out exactly what you need to put down. The options you now have are entered in error, person died, or relationship ended. If you do click relationship ended, you'll notice there's no further information asked of you. This is simply all you need to put in. If we want to add another familial relationship, we could, for instance, add Minnie Mouse. And as I mentioned before, because Minnie is recorded as female, we now have aunt, daughter, granddaughter, niece, sister, and so on. And as Minnie is the younger person in this relationship, you can see it's defaulted to Minnie's date of birth for when the relationship started. In this case, we're not going to add any features. But what you can see is we've got a relationship suggestion. In this case, because Sonia Salhan is social worker for Minnie Mouse, it's now also suggesting that there's a possibility that she might also be Cindy's social worker. You can have a look at this on the graph and decide to accept this, or you can cancel. What you'll also notice is that we've got another relationship that we've not added. So Jeremy Bourne. Now Jeremy Bourne is showing as the great nephew to our citizen Cindy, and this would be because of his relation to Minnie Mouse. So again, Eclipse likes to be quite logical and add people based on what makes sense. This time I'm going to add a professional relationship. Again, the person will need to be in Eclipse, which in the live system all of your colleagues should be. In this case, I'm simply going to add it to the profile. Once again, we've got a long list of professional relationships that are possible, and I'm going to select social care practitioner. These boxes that we saw before in the familial section have popped up, but they are greyed out. And again, we want the start date for this relationship, which we're going to list as today. And the profiles team has automatically been entered in as well. The features that we can add here are different to in familial. So you can add their primary worker, key worker, care manager, etc. In this case, and in most cases, the one we want to select is this top option of allocated worker. If we save that, then we can now see social care practitioner has been added. And at the top of the screen, we've now got the allocated to box filled in. If you are struggling to view this in the list format, you can at the top of the screen here select graph. And here we can see it laid out. So you've got the different generations, for instance, Jeremy Bourne being a great nephew, as this line indicates, great nephew, is down in level 2. If we'd selected Cindy's parents, they would appear in level -1, and any children or nieces or nephews of Cindy would appear in level 1. You can actually click on the top right corner button for a person in order to switch the focus to them. We are now looking at Jack White, and we can see Jack has a much more complicated structure to his relationships than Cindy does. If we scroll in again in here, we can see Jack has a brother, a cousin, civil partner, that's Cindy that we've just added, his social care practitioner, more cousins, sisters, friends, etc. Once again, we can click on the arrow to switch the focus back to Cindy. You can return to the list view at any time from the top of these buttons again, where it says list. I'm now going to show you the case notes section. So if you click on case notes in the left-hand side, you can see currently there are no case notes. What we can do is we can add in the top right corner. Firstly, you need to put in an entry date. Once again, these are separated out into different boxes, but you can click on the select current date. You don't need to put a time in, however, there is a button to put the current time in as well, and this could be useful for indexing purposes. The next option you need to select is the entry type. We can see there are a lot relating to adoption and fostering. You won't see these in the live system as these do relate to the children's department. But you can see we have a full range of other options for adding. So you could, for instance, be adding a case recording or summary, a client financial services note. You could be adding enablement or equipment and adaptations. There's an option here as well for identity documents. There's one for legal documents, and also person contact. I'm going to select the person contact and show you that from the subtype, and not all entry types have subtypes, and you don't need to select a subtype, but we could, for instance, select that we've received an email. You could then put in a brief summary, as you need to select something for an entry. So we're going to say an email received from citizen requesting care review. If we scroll down, we see some more non-mandatory options such as source organisation and source. These are not complete in the train system and don't need to be filled in anyway. You can save your case notes for later. Once you're done with it, it should be completed. This is because if you save, you can edit it later, but then so can other people, and it may be that the original message gets lost. If you complete it, then it can no longer be edited, and the system will warn you before you do this. Lastly, here you can upload a document. If you click on this, a new window will pop up and it will offer you to choose a file. In the context of this case note that I've created, we could say that having received the email, we decided that because there's a lot of text in it, rather than copy and paste this into the case note, which you could do, we're going to actually just put a summary in the case notes and then attach the actual email, which can then be accessed and viewed at any time. This replaces the e-records function of uploading documents, and it will just require some information here. So title, there will probably be a naming convention that will come out to you. As yet, I do not have this. As an email from citizen, and in the description, you'll probably want to be as descriptive as possible. However, you could also say see case notes for summary. Once again, you don't need to click in the source organisation. And although you can cancel out of this, if you need to change the file that you've added, you can click on Remove Chosen File, and you can see that resets it. You can then view this, or you can delete it. Although you can, if you save this, you can go back and edit and remove the file. If you complete the case entry, you'll see that it says there that completing a case note entry will stop any further edits to the case note entry field. Are you sure you want to complete this entry? You can select no if you wish, but we're going to say yes. And you can see now, if we decide to view this entry, we can't edit it. And we can no longer remove the file that we've uploaded. If something does go wrong and you do need a case note removed, then this will likely be dealt with by one of the IT-based functions, such as data quality, IT themselves, or BITSOs. This has not been decided as of yet, and so do not use this training session as evidence of where it should go to. As I say, you can download this file or you can simply view it. You can upload further files if you wish. What I'm going to do now is add a couple more notes. As you can see, for the equipment adaptations, there are further subtypes that you can put in. You could, for instance, say that you've conducted a home visit. Let's say in this case, you can see there, this spell checks for you as you go along, and if you right click, you can get options to change that. So visited the citizen and confirmed Rails had been correctly. And again, we could upload a picture here to demonstrate how the work has been completed. Once again, we're going to complete this entry. Now what I'm going to do is show you that if we click on this button here to create documents, this little window will appear on your screen. There are drop downs, but there aren't many options to select. You can decide whether the case note report we're going to generate will be with or without an address, and it will come out as a PDF. When we click on generate, you see here document generation process started at the top. If we head into the document section, you can see here the document we just created. You can remove this document or you can download it. If we download it, then here you can see the case notes that we've added are listed, which you may need to either save, options up there, or print, again option up there, to send to another agency or the citizen. This may not arise too often, but this is an option that you can do in Eclipse. Further, you can see the case note attachments, and here you can see which attachments we've added to case notes, as well as the accompanying details such as when it was added, what the document name is, and so on. Attachments can also be added to forms, which I will show later on how to do this. And again, you can access these from this screen. You can also use the filter in the top right corner in order to search for a document either by name or date. So in this case, we're going to say that we want to search for rails. And there we go. We've got the picture of rails we can find there. Next, I will show the work lists. Now, work lists are like to-do lists which cover a process. So for instance, this process might be for an occupational therapy contact assessment for minor adaptations and so on. These will include forms, and you can see there is a form section just above the work list section. However, forms are not added individually. Forms need to be added as part of work lists. This is just because you need the task list and the to-do list to prompt you and to carry the process on. In the work list section, in the top right, you have an add button. Once clicked on, you can see that's disappeared and you now have a filter button, which we will come back to in a second. Here we can see all the forms that this profile has the authority to add. Again, this is defaulted to 10 results, so we can up that to 100, but as you can see, we still now have a lot that we don't actually need. Return to the top of the screen, and in the top right corner where we have that filter button, if you click on this, this gives you the option to search by name. In this case, we're going to add an occupational therapy form. Please note that if you try to type in OT, this will not give you an option that you need. You do need to search for occupational therapy, and as you can see, after just 2 letters, we've already received the results we need. In order to add the form, you go to the right-hand side next to the form you want and click on the big green Add button. In this case, I'm going to add an occupational therapy contact assessment. This will automatically take you to the work list. As I say, as you can see here, these work lists tell you what to do, and they are like to-do lists. In most cases, you will probably find just two tasks. The first one being to add the form, and the second one being to complete the form. As you can see here, we don't have the add form because this is automatically added to our form list. In some cases, you may have 3, such as add the form, submit the form for authorization, and then have the form authorized, which would be by a self-authorizer or by a manager. You may also find other tasks in a work list. What we want to do in this work list is click on the arrow or the text where it describes the task, which will be in the task column. Only click once, as if you double click, you can see that will open it and close it quite quickly. Once you've clicked on the arrow or text, you can see that more information has been brought up, including when the form is due to be started and when it's due to be completed. If we click on the big green View Form button, this will take us into our form section, as you can see on the left here. And as long as your pop-up blocker doesn't block it, this should open up in a completely new window. If I just show you the form screen, you can see here we've got the name of the form we're working on. Any further information. As I say, you can add files which will be indicated here, and you have the form's state. So in this case, the form state is draft, which is a blank page icon. If you have had your pop-up blocker stop you from opening up the window, you can disable this. Up in the address bar, you'll see a square icon with a red circle or square on it. You can click on this and then enable or allow pop-ups from this website. Alternatively, you can click on the name of the form and this will open it up. Another alternative option is in the Actions column, in the Select button, you have the option to view the form. From here I can also show you that you can upload a file, and this can be uploaded at any time before or after completing or even starting the form. However, as with the case notes, which I don't think I mentioned before, but case notes replace observations. As with those, once the form has been completed, you'll be unable to remove the file. If we just show, this is exactly the same as adding a case note, although description is no longer mandatory. This might be used, for instance, if you've received an assessment in from an external professional. You may just need to actually attach a copy of that. And again, this will replace uploading files to eRecords, and hopefully you saw before, it will take a matter of seconds, dramatically decreasing the time taken to upload documents. Further, there's the option to create a document, which, like the case note report we previously created, will just create a copy of the form that can be sent out to the citizen as required, or to any other agencies that require it. Going back to this window that was opened up, and as you can see, it is a window that you can now move around and access the Eclipse page. You could, for instance, decide that you need some information from the person's details, or maybe you need to check out documents, relationships, anything else. Rather than in Care First, where you would need to entirely come out of the form, get the information you need, maybe copy and paste it or store it somewhere else, and then go back into the form. You can just work on this by looking at one and the other at the same time. You could even have two forms open at the same time, or more than two. There is no limit to that, as long as your laptop is able to keep up with the processing. So this is how a form appears in Eclipse. Although the same questions and information should come over from the Care First form to Eclipse, whereas in Care First you had different pages and tabs, and there was a great risk of the website crashing in between pages, and you could potentially lose the work you'd done. This all appears in the same page, although in different sections. So if we want to move, as you can see in this table of contents, from the Notes from Initial Contact section to the Presenting Needs and Outcomes section, you would need to click on these, as otherwise you can't go from one section to the next by scrolling. In the Content section, you can see that as well as each section, you then have the sections within, which are broken down into little bite-sized chunks. In order to input in any information, you need to click on Edit. Once you've completed the information, you can then click on Save, and then edit the next section, which may be useful if you need to just save your progress but not carry on at the moment. Or you can click on Save and Next, and that'll take you to the next section. If you decide that you've actually not finished the previous section correctly and you want to edit it again, you can see we've got an error here saying you're already editing the section outcomes. Please cancel or save before attempting to edit another section. This is in order to prevent any errors from happening and from losing any data. You basically cannot open and edit more than one section at a time and then leave them open to potentially lose information. You do need to save what you're doing before you go on. If you try and save this section, you'll notice that it's telling you validation's failed. What this means is that you haven't completed all the mandatory information. Not all subsections have mandatory information. You can tell the ones that do, because in the corner of the contents line and also the actual subsection box, there is this orange triangle with the 1 in it, the 1 indicating that there's one mandatory bit of information at the moment. And if you hover over it, it tells you the same information basically. If you're not sure which section you're in, you can look at the table of contents and you see this icon on the side of outcomes with the square with the pencil in it. This indicates any the section you're currently editing. If you are in a section with mandatory details but you don't want to complete it at the moment, or you can't complete it, you can click on cancel and you'll see it's taken us out. It hasn't saved anything we've done though, but we haven't actually done anything. Something else I'll point out, if we go back to the first section, the notes from initial contact, you can see that this is blank, and as the name suggests, this should include notes taken from the initial contact form. So in Care First you have peek and grab. You do not have this in Eclipse. However, if a form goes from one stage to the next in the correct order that it should and is generated correctly, then the information will automatically pull itself through. In this case, we did not have an initial contact, so there was no information to pull through. However, even if there was, if you click on edit, you can see that we can actually change this or put anything in that we need. It may be that there was an initial contact, however, something happened to the form that was generated and this form was added separately by adding a work list, in which case you could then just copy and paste the details in that you need. Alternatively, you can ignore, and as stated before, you can click on Save and Next just to travel through these sections while saving what you're doing. In this section, the presenting needs, as you can see, there's no orange triangle, so it's not a mandatory section. However, if you are going to complete this, Eclipse has provided a handy set of guidelines for what you might want to include. In the Outcomes section, you can see that if you try to select an option and then you select No Further Action, you'll get a little error message saying please do not combine the No Further Action with any other option. This is Eclipse being logical, saying that it doesn't make sense to say there's no further action if there is a further action. However, Eclipse won't actually stop you from having these boxes selected together. I'm going to select all of these options, and you can see that there are no further sections at the moment. If I click Save and Next and there weren't any further sections to be filled in, this would just take us back as if we clicked on Save. However, clicking on Save and Next, you can see we've now got further sections to fill in, and this is based on the sections that we completed in Outcomes. You can change this, so if we edit this, although we can't, as I stated before, we are currently in key safe details, so we need to save or cancel out of this. If I go into Outcomes, click on Edit, and take out, for instance, ordering the simple equipment. Now when I save, you can see the simple equipment has disappeared. The key safe details and minor adaptations required are not mandatory boxes. However, you can edit in details and these will follow through for whoever picks up the next stage of the process. If you click on the option here to select the tenure details and say that it's owner occupied, that's all fine, but if you click on something such as council, you'll see we've got an additional question to answer now of has the landlord agreed to installation of a key safe. This is what is known as a dynamic form, as are most of the forms on Eclipse. And all this means simply is that the form will change depending on what you do. So as we saw before, adding in that we wanted a key safe to be ordered has created a new section. We can then remove that if we actually change our minds. But what Eclipse is doing is, rather than give you all of the sections and then you working out what you need to ignore or not fill in, now you can just tell it what you want to do and it will tell you what it needs from you. I am going to fill in these details. Here you can see you can specify a timescale for the key-safe installation. If you say hospital discharge, then the expected date of discharge is requested. Information in here. And for the purpose of this training, I am focusing on how to complete the forms, how to add them through the work lists, and how to carry one on to the next. I'm not so much focusing on what actual content you would put in, as these would be related to your current role, which you will undoubtedly know more than I do. If we save and next out of this section, now we're in the minor adaptations, and you can see what we can do here is we can select, say if the person has rails or needs rails, we could say they need them in the front and then what side of the property. If they need more than just that type of rail, you can click on this plus sign and you'll see we can now add in more. If, for instance, you put in left side twice and you realise, oh, actually we don't need that, you can click on the minus sign and that will remove the item that you put in. You can then also specify any other minor adaptations that haven't been specified under this Rails section. And finally, who's responsible for the installation. So if you select, for instance, referral to other agency, then details are required. Well, again, it's not a mandatory option, but if you have these, you should put them in. As I mentioned before, when I click on Save and Next, you'll see we've now been taken out of editing any section and what we've done has been saved. When you're done with a form, you can click on Exit or Exit and Complete. If you click on Exit and Complete, it will ask you, not only are you sure you wish to exit and complete, but it will again ask you, just pointing out you're about to complete the form, are you sure you wanted to do that? If we click on Cancel, then the form stays as draft. If we go in, we can edit it now. If we simply selected Exit, it will just ask if we want to exit and nothing else. Although we could have completed it with the Exit and Complete button, you can also go into Select, and there is the option to complete this form. As this form doesn't require authorization, it's now completed and has an orange circle with a white tick, as you can see. What we can do now is go into the work lists again. And you can see here we now have more work lists that we haven't manually added. We have one for the key safe ordering and one for the minor adaptations ordering. If we go to the end here, you can see who is responsible at the moment for these forms. And these have both been assigned to the Occupational Therapy First Response team. You can also see here a completion percentage. So the specialist assessment is 0%, whereas the ordering forms are at 50% each. What this means is, like with our contact assessment, these two forms have already been added to your forms list. So therefore that is 1 out of 2 tasks completed. Whereas the specialist assessment, we need to manually add that ourselves, which I will do later on. For now, if I just show you where we have these adaptations ordering forms, let's say these were to be completed by a different section. We can click on Select, And now from here, you can see we can view the work list, which is the same as when we clicked on it earlier. You can prioritize your work list. If I click on that, you see the priority option. Simply is it none, low, medium, or high. So if we say, for instance, it's high priority and save that, there's now a red bar on the side and the word high. If we go back into our select option, you can reassign the work list if someone else is to work on it. The default option it will give you is to reassign it to a team. So that is the team owner, which is highlighted there. And as well as that, it will assume that you want to assign it to your team or one of your teams. So it's defaulted to the occupational therapy team, as that's the profile I'm currently in, but I could select for the brokers team or the training team 5. You can also choose to assign it to another team. So for instance, I may wish to assign this to business support. When we click on save, you can see that has automatically updated. If you needed to, you can reassign that again. And this time we're going to look at the individual owner option. Once again, you can see that this has defaulted to assigning it to myself, as it presumes that I'm going to be the one to work on this. And again, you can say which team you want that to be under. So it could be, for instance, if I was in the business support team, I might want to give it to myself, but in my business support capacity. You can assign it to another person. So let's say, when I say give it to myself, I don't mean Train 53, but I mean literally myself, Drew Hoskin Smith. And we can change that if we want, but now we just need to select which team. So in this case, I'm going to give it to the Brum Adults team, and we click Save. And once again, you can see that has automatically updated. Not like in Care First, where you may be only able to do certain things once a day, which is more allocated workers than allocating work itself. But you can see it is automatically done for us. However, I can still work on this by clicking on to the work list. Again, we go into the section by clicking on the arrow or the text and click on View Form. Before I do that, you'll notice the due to complete date is the 27th of December, as different forms have different lengths of time that they'll be expected to be worked on. This form, as you can see, has only 2 subsections within the section. And you can see that actually already information, which you may recall is the information I added to the contact assessment. The only section that is outstanding is the for use by business support. And we can see here, we can put in details of the contact with housing and include the order number. If I just start mashing my keyboard a bit, you'll notice here there's actually no limit like there was in Care First to how much information you can record in these text boxes. You can also now edit them. So for instance, you could go bold, italics, underlined, and then you can also make lists. So we could do bullet points, or we could do numbers. And these options will just give you the chance to make the forms look a bit better, make certain information stand out a bit more. If we save this, we will exit and complete. So yes, we are sure, and yes, we want it completed. Now with these forms, once they've been completed, you'll see that we can no longer edit them, although we can still view them. And once again, with the key safe ordering, you can see it is exactly the same as the minor adaptations. you can once again put in details of the order, including supplier details and order number. And once complete, you can exit and complete, and you'll notice I've not saved this section. So when I click on exit and complete, it's just going to give me a warning that I'm currently editing a section and I will lose data that I've not saved. If we accept that, again, we'll get another little option there, just warning us yet again. And now we can complete that form. Now, as stated, you can no longer edit these forms, so what you can actually do instead, or what you will be able to do, is contact, and again, it'll either be sort of data quality, Bitso, someone like that, with a request, a bit like how we would currently change and reopen forms in Care First 6. Once again, this has yet to be decided who will be responsible, and any other processes surrounding that. So please do not take my suggestion of data quality or Bitso forward. If we go back into our work lists, you'll recall we just have the occupational therapy specialist assessment that we triggered. If we click into this work list, as I've stated before, this form actually needs to be added as well as completed. So if we click on add, you see there's an add form button. You'll also notice the complete OT specialist assessment form is grayed out, and this is because we've actually we've not completed the first step of adding it. So you cannot add it until you cannot complete it until you've added it. It's also possible, if it's decided that this is no longer required, to completely ignore this form with the big blue ignore button. However, we are of course going to add this form to work on it. You can see straight away this form has a lot more information in the contents section, so it even has its own little scroll bar to get you up and down and where you need to go. Once again, I am not going to show you exactly what goes into these forms. You'll be able to have a look at these yourselves. But you can see the sort of information that is gathered. In the accommodation and adaptations already in place section, you can see once again we have these plus and minus buttons to populate information. In the BCIF section, you have all these different steps of criteria, the internal mobility thresholds and internal steps, stairs, you've got toileting and continence and other sections. Once you've completed these, and you can put in a little conversation summary. In the next section, which is also called conversation summary, you can calculate the BCIF score. If we edit this, we can see here, you've got the option yes or no, would you like to calculate the BCIF score? However, you can see here, although it says result will appear here when you click on save, if we click on save, we're getting an error. And this is basically because in the training system, this has not actually been completed and finalized. In the live system, it will work properly. Carrying on with this form, you can see from the conversation section, if we edit this, you can actually decide at this point whether the citizen requires conversation 1, 2, or 3 to be triggered. And the conversation 1, for instance, can actually be completed within this form as well. Finally, I'm just going to show you there is at the bottom of this form an equipment and referrals option. So if we edit this, you can add, if you hadn't already, you can add in orders for key safes, simple equipment and minor adaptations, a lot like we did in the contact assessment. If you click yes and save that, like with the contact assessment, this will just appear again. If we exit and complete, again we'll click yes and complete. If we go into our work lists, you'll see we've now got an occupational therapy simple equipment ordering form, which we didn't have before. We didn't generate that when we did the key safe and minor adaptations. But if you've missed it out before or something's changed, it needs to be done, you can do it again in the specialist assessment. I am, however, not going to complete this, as there's not much new to show you with this. What I am going to show you now is if we click again on the Add button, still in the work list screen, and if you click on Filter, you can see that our previous filter is still there, but obviously the results here have not conformed to that filter. Now, I'm going to show you the technology-enabled care request. So again, we've put in a search here, tech. We've got the technology-enabled care request, and we're going to click on the green Add button. Once again, this is a form that we need to actually add. And with this form, straight off the bat, we've got mandatory information to be added. With this form, although it's asking for the practitioner's name, it's actually not a drop-down list, not a search list, not anything like that. So it actually doesn't need to be someone who's in the system already. Fill in these details just with any old random information. At this point, you can add a team. So we could say, for instance, that we want to pass this to the occupational therapy intake. You can then remove that with the minus button if you decide you don't want it. But basically, at this point, the option is you can either add a team to receive this work, or it will automatically go back to yourself. We're going to save and next, and look at the services required. And you can see straight off the bat, we've got a big blue box here, just happily telling us that you may select more than one service, but you should not select Careline installation at the same time as Careline deinstallation. Which makes sense, because if you're installing it, why would you want to deinstall it as well? However, once again, the system won't actually stop you. It will just give you a further error to tell you that you shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to select all of these sections just to give you a quick view. So now we can see we've got telecare installation, activity monitoring request, and own phone referral sections. Looking at mandatory information here, with the telecare request, is the Careline installation required to facilitate discharge from hospital? You can select yes or no. Either way, this planned date of discharge box will stay, but you don't need to complete it. Date of most recent social care assessment, again, don't need to complete. Next mandatory question is the telecare service required as part of a long-term care package or part of a preventative service? Has a budget been agreed for this request? You can say yes or no. Date that the budget was agreed, we'll say that was done 1 day ago. And then the name of the manager who approved the budget. The rest of the information is not required. So we can save and next out of this. Next is the referral reason. You need to state whether it needs to be required urgently. If you do select yes, then you'll be asked why it's urgent, because not everything can go through as urgent. If you tick no, you see that disappears. The activity monitoring request, again, quite standard. And finally, the own phone referral. And this is simply a case of has an own phone already been provided by the assessing team or not? If it's already been issued, then you can just there record the details, or otherwise you can select own phone to be issued by Careline. Now this form is complete, and as a general sort of tip, you can tell when the form is ready to be completed potentially, because it won't have any more orange triangles. We'll select exit and complete here, and yes, complete this form. Once again in work list, we can see we've now got the activity monitoring referral evaluation, the telecare installation request and the own phone request have all been added, and these ones have actually already been assigned to Careline to complete. So when Careline go into their homepage, any member of Careline, and they look at what's assigned to the team, they'll find that there. The final thing I want to show you now is the end allocation or closed case work list. Once again, we're adding a form, we're filtering, and we're just going to search for that. We found it, end allocation or closed case. Now this may not be something that you'll need to complete yourself too often. You'll see that this form has 3 steps: the add it, the submit it for authorization, and then get it authorized. If we click on add form, straight away you'll see that we're asked for a subtype. Now in certain forms, so if you're doing the conversation 1, 2, 3, actually, yep, so it is 1, 2 or 3, or any support plans, for instance, then it will ask you, for instance, do you want to do just a conversation 1, just a conversation 2, or a 1 and 2? This option actually doesn't affect what you end up doing at all. All it is so that when you're looking down the forms that you've completed, you'll be able to see straight away what type of form this was and what you used it for. You can see here the options just close case or end allocation. In the bottom right, you can see a helpful skip button. You will need to complete this this selection before you can actually complete the form, but you can also change it and it will give you the option to do that later. So let's say we're selecting an end allocation. Actually, we're going to skip it for now. We're going to skip that. In case status, you can see straight away we've got information there of select closed case, full work involvement has ended and no services are being provided. If the services continue or other workers remain allocated, select end allocation. So this is basically, are you just putting the form in to say that you're done with what you're doing but the citizen remains, or has the citizen, which it could be they've passed away or moved out of area, some reason why we no longer basically are doing anything with them. We're going to click close case, and we're going to save and next. Into this next section, you can see we need to complete all recording and ensure data quality items are up to date. And this comes with a little worker checklist, so if it is that you're completing a case off, then you can just tick these off to be sure of what you need to do. So if they have finished all services, you need to ensure business support being instructed to end any service agreements. You can see now a little option there has just prompted us that we must select at least 4 options, and as there are exactly 4 options, it basically means select everything. You're prompted to ensure all forms, work lists and case notes are completed. Ensure data quality items are up to date. For example, this could be the address, the relationships, classifications, warnings and alerts. And if the person is deceased, check date died. If the person is not deceased, you'll still tick the box because you are still checking this. Last but not least, we need a worker involvement summary, and I am just going to open up a script that I have for something that I can copy and paste. And what we're going to say is the citizen was in receipt of short-term support following discharge from hospital. The support is now ended and the case can be closed as they are not open to any other ASC service. You'll see here we've got some guidance, which if we see, it says this will create an automatic case note entry. So you can remember we added some manually earlier. This one will actually add one straight away for us. So rather than having to copy and paste and then create a new case note, which there is the fear that you might actually forget to do that, this will do it for you. There's also a little note here that when this form is authorised, a record close classification will be created for file retention purposes. Again, we're going to save this. And now, although we still have the exit option, the exit and complete option has become exit and submit. If we click on exit and submit and we say yes, you'll see once again we've got the select subtype for this form, and we can select end allocation. Now you might be thinking, why is he doing that? Because we've actually closed the case, not ended the allocation. Well, I will show you this. When we submit it, you'll see rather than having the blank white page or the orange circle with a tick, we now have a blue circle with a question mark next to this form, and the form state is submitted. What we can do with this form has been changed. If you're just in a worker profile, not a manager or self-authorizer profile, you won't have the option to reject or authorize. You can still view the form, but you can see we can't edit this. If you exit it, we're not getting the option to select the subtype anymore. But what you can do is, until this is authorized, you have the option to unsubmit this form. So we can unsubmit it, and then we can try resubmitting it. And again, it gives us the option for subtype, and at this point we can say, actually, I meant to close the case. Now this has gone back to the submitted stage. And as an authorizer, there are two ways that this can be authorized. Either you can view the form, which presumably, if it's a manager doing this, they will need to just go through this form and make sure it's okay. And then you can exit and authorize. If you click on this, you see there are authorization comments, so you'll need to put something in. Similarly, if you decided that actually something has been done wrong, say for instance we selected end allocation, it should have been closed case, this can be rejected, and again rejection comments are required. As you'll notice, because this is a manager profile and we have the option to authorize, when we're in the form, although we can exit and authorize, we cannot edit this form. So what would need to be done is either the worker would need to unsubmit or the authorizer would need to reject. And then with the rejection comments, you could just say that, you know, should have been closed case, not end allocation. And although I'll demo this, so I'll put in our rejection reason and reject. This is now a red circle with a cross. However, this doesn't mean that there's anything massively wrong. We can still go into this form, edit it, and exit and submit it, which will just put this straight back to the blue circle stage. If we then authorize this, then you'll see this form now, the end involvement closed case, is now a green circle with a white tick, showing that it's not only completed, but it's also authorized. As was noticed before, if we go into the classification section, you'll notice that the record has been closed with a classification to indicate this. Classifications can be added manually, and you can end classifications as well using the select box. However, things like this record closed and any disabilities can be added through different means. So when you're doing if you're doing the support plan, then you can note down what disabilities a person may have, and these will be automatically added to classifications, which again saves on admin work and also tries to avoid the possibility of a worker forgetting something that needs to be done. In the case notes section, we can see that as well as the manually added notes, we now have the automatic ended note, and this is exactly what was put down in the work summary. And finally, we've got the chronology, which has been updated with a case closed. You can also view chronology from, if you click on the person's name at the top of the screen, rather than taking you into the actual person details that we changed earlier, you can see that we've now got an overview. So we can see recent case notes. We can see a chronology, which if you click on it, it will show you all the events. We only have one event and it was just from today. But if you have a case which spans several days with several different events, such as receiving a referral, completing conversation 1, completing conversation 3, then that will be listed down. Finally, we have our key relationships here are listed. So we've got the sister, civil partner, and social care practitioner, the allocated worker. If we go into relationships, and let's say we want to end this relationship, the professional one, the social care practitioner, we can put in today's date. End reason, we can just say relationship has ended, select yes, and you can see that has automatically updated at the top here, where the allocated worker is now blank. If you want to add another one, then we can do this here. So we'll say Luca is going to take over as social care practitioner. Once again, starting today, and once again, they're going to be an allocated worker. We'll save this. And you can see here, up the top of the screen, this is allocated, this is changed to allocated to. And in this teams list, this is also changed. And this is without having to wait until the next day, like in Care First. So this brings to a close everything that I wanted to and needed to show you. What you will be able to do going forward is there will be some refresher e-learning in January, and this is completely optional and does not include a test, but it can be used for your own work. And there are also other resources available, such as process maps, video snippets, and cue cards. Thank you very much for using this training that I've recorded. I'm hoping that it will come in useful, and if you've got any questions, you can direct them to either myself, Drew Hoskins Smith, or to the Project Eclipse Adults mailbox. There are also champions who you may or may not know. Again, a list is available, and you can contact them in the first instance if you like. Thank you very much, and have a good day.